Hello, hello, and welcome to Two Crones and a Microphone. I am Linda.
And I am Betty.
And I am Sally.
And Dee.
Oh, and I am Dee.
What a great start. As Cultural Midwives, our podcast offers guidance and teachings to those seeking wisdom from us as experienced crones. We utilize effective methods to connect with ourselves and our surroundings, and we embrace spirituality as a source of resilience and empowerment. This is our second podcast for year 3 of Two Crones and a Microphone. And as part of our third year, we're going to continue to implement updates around our new theme, Finding Joy, Honoring Ourselves. Please do see our website, that's twocronesandamicrophone.com, for our in-person and online classes through minervaed.com, minervaed.com. And don't forget to support us by subscribing to our podcast.
So today, as part of our interview with the Crones series, we're delighted to speak with Dee Golas. She said she wasn't sure how to describe herself, but then admitted that while she would not describe herself as a warrior woman, she has always tried to live Oceana's example to be a challenge to fix reality. She started her professional career as a community organizer in Seattle, Washington, then became an OBGYN physician assistant. She said she thought she would always work with women, but then responded to the challenge when it came from Creator, whether we call that Creator or God, whatever word we want to use. And as she looks back, and we look back, we might all be able to identify a moment when our life takes a change, and we decide whether to respond to that call. She responded to that call. So even though she said she thought she would always work with women, Dee said Creator had another idea in mind, and we'll let her tell that story. So Dee, I'm going to turn it over to you now to describe yourself.
First of all, thank you so much, gals. It's really nice and an honor to be here with you. It's hard for me, but I am essentially a retired clinical social worker living in Western Montana in a rural community and trying to deepen my relationship to Earth Mother that in the working world didn't create a whole lot of time for. So I see myself as somebody who has just tried to walk my talk.
Hmm.
Well said. Well said.
Hmm.
So Dee, God, I've known you for so many years now. And I've always wondered how you got started on this spiritual path.
Yeah, it actually started in the second grade when I was at St. Francis Xavier grade school preparing for First Communion. And unfortunately, I don't remember the nun's name, but she was a young nun. I remember that. And I didn't realize it then, but she really prepared me for a whole perspective on life that a lot of folks don't have, the blessings to have been born and raised with. She taught us that evil exists in the world, that there are bad things happening and there are bad people who can perpetrate them. But that as long as we are living love and serving God, we don't have to worry about it because we are here to stand up to that and to transform that, and that will be okay. And that somehow sunk in by the time I was 7, and that as long as I followed Creator's will, I'd be taken care of, and I just had to pay attention and listen for what that will was directing me. So that was quite an advantage. I realized later as a therapist that a lot of people who I saw suffering from depression and anxiety didn't have to begin with.
Mhm.
They were confronted unprepared.
That's an amazing message to hear and be able to integrate when we think about how old you were. You were really young.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So
Yeah,
that's,
extraordinary. What a blessing.
yeah.
But I like the hope that she also instilled with
Yes.
the message that, yeah, there are bad things out there, but as long as we continue to come from a place of love and compassion, we're able to kind of work with that or turn that or face that challenge. That's amazing.
Yeah, and that basically Jesus had given us an example of how we can do that. That all we had to do was follow that example. And that stuck with me and has carried me through to today.
Mm.
So your spiritual path, though, did change. And was Ocean a result of that, or were there other things that placed you on other paths?
Well, I became a very devout Catholic because of an experience that I had in the 8th grade. So I kind of stayed on that path, but dove more deeply into it. I was in religion class, sitting at my little desk, and the nun was saying something that I didn't agree with that seemed like a contradiction to what I had learned earlier. And I don't even remember what it was, but I do remember getting all A's on my religion test, but always getting a B in religion. So this, I think, challenging what she had said, and I didn't like the answer, and I was frustrated. And then I experienced the presence of Jesus standing at my right in this incredible calm and peace take over. And although I don't remember any words, the essence of what I remember experiencing was the message that, you know, don't get hung up on the small things. Don't sweat the small stuff.
Mm.
Yes, there are contradictions in what the church teaches. Yes, there are contradictions in the Bible. Yes, there are things that don't necessarily logically flow. Don't let that stop you. Just be love. And
Mm.
um, that altered my life in the 8th grade. I became a daily communicant for 8 years. So I was very deeply involved up through undergraduate school in the church. But by the time I got to graduate school, I had a realization that, of course, at that time, the church was still teaching that if you weren't a Catholic, you didn't go to heaven. And I knew that that couldn't be true, and the sexism in the church, uh, just a number of political factors that were going on, caused me to leave the Catholic Church by the time I was in graduate school at
Mm.
the University of Michigan, and where I was getting a master's in social work.
Mm.
And because I was still in school, though, I was looking around for, well, where else would I fit? What would work? So I was able to attend different churches in the community in Ann Arbor and the Baha'i gatherings, and I was
Mm.
seeking. That's when
Mhm.
I became a real seeker
Mhm.
and didn't find anything there. And after I graduated, I actually lived in Canada for a little while, thinking about not even staying in America because it was during the Vietnam War. And then I realized I needed to come back and help change my home country. And I started community organizing in Seattle. I was hired by a Lutheran church that had a building next door called the Cascade Community Center. And part of that center had a free clinic and I was managing the free clinic and wanted to get training for our nurses because there were women wanting to come in for more OBGYN care. And the training that I had set up for the nurses on one Saturday morning, the nurses all showed up, the trainer showed up, but the woman who was supposed to be their patient didn't show up.
Oh.
And I was the only other one there. And up until that point, I'd been very, very modest. But I had 3 thoroughly explained pelvic exams. I got to
Lord.
see my cervix for the first time, 3 times actually.
Oh my goodness.
And she, during one of them, because the nurses were going to become nurse practitioners when they completed the training later on. And she looked up at me and she said, you know, you don't have to be a nurse to be able to do this. You could get trained as a physician's assistant in OBGYN. And
Wow.
they had this training program through the VA that it was trying to expand cancer
Mhm.
screening to low-income women and
Mm.
doing it through the community clinics, but not every community clinic had a women's clinic. Not all doctors felt comfortable doing that. They were all volunteers. And so I was just frustrated enough with social work at that point that I signed up and accepted to the program, women's health care specialist, and graduated as a physician's assistant in OBGYN, and then set up a women's clinic at Cascade where I was working, and then another one at Valley Pulse Clinic in Renton, outside of Seattle. And
Wow,
that
Dee.
that was it was through one of my patients that I actually met Oshana when I was doing that work.
Really?
Yes, it was uh, actually I was asked to meet with a group of nurses in Tacoma, Washington, also outside of Seattle, and then to help them set up a women's clinic since I had just set 2 up as part of my contract. And they I had made the presentation and had gone out to leave in the parking lot, and I had borrowed a friend's van because I didn't have a vehicle at that point. And the engine wouldn't start. And I knew enough to check to see if the battery had fluid over the cells because I unscrewed the caps. That was back when you could unscrew 6 caps. And to see if it would accept a charge because the nurses were coming out. I could maybe get somebody to jump start it. But I couldn't really see. It was getting dark and I stupidly lit a match over the cell that I had just unscrewed. And the vapor, the gases over that battery exploded and instantly blinded me in my left eye. But as
Wow.
Creator would have it there, the blessings were all there that I needed. There was this group of nurses who were out in the parking lot that came over and they took me back in, washed my eye out, got me to the VA hospital because the only time in my life I had health insurance was when I was being part of that women's healthcare specialist training program. So I had access to a VA hospital. And so they admitted me because of concussion to the eyeball, and I had internal bleeding in the eye. And so at first they said, the doc there said that my vision would be restored. And then after I'd been in the hospital, I think 5 days, they went, oh, you're getting a scar on your macula. You're going to be blind in that eye. So you might as well take your eye patch off and go back to work. And when the doctor was ready to walk out of the door telling me that, I said, excuse me, like, what can I do to help that eye heal? And he looked at me like I was almost crazy asking that question and said, that's scar tissue that's going to form. There's nothing you can do. Just accept it, get used to it. You'll be okay. You got one good eye. And I don't know, it just may be my Polish logic, but I knew right then and there that was wrong. It seemed to me that if I cut myself, there's 3 things I can do. I can clean it out, I can put an antiseptic on it, and I can protect it. So to me, the more complicated the injury, the more there should be able to do. That's my parents' logic. So I went to the University of Washington's medical library, and till I found pictures of eyes, internal eyes, what they look like. And then I asked one of the volunteer nurses in our clinic to look in my eye and tell me what mine looked like. And so I had an image of what I was coming from and where I was headed. And
Smart.
and I asked her,
Yes.
you know, what else I could do. And so she suggested I go see a couple of naturopathic doctors, or actually a naturopath. I went to two because I didn't know if I could trust them either. And I ended up going to John Bastier and Joe Pizzorno. Or
Oh,
You're kidding.
wow.
Oh
no,
my gosh.
I didn't tell each of them that I'd gone to the other. And then they
Ah,
gave me an identical list of pretty much
Sure,
about a
sure.
dozen things that I could
yeah,
do.
yeah.
One of which was put my eye patch back on, don't go back to work, and slowly retrain my eye to see. And they gave me a homeopathic remedy, mustard extract, thiazidamine,
Hmm.
and a regime of vitamins and minerals to make sure my eyes had what they needed, and said that scar tissue could be dissolved. So I did what they said, and really didn't know for sure how much I had progressed or not, until 6 months later when I had to go back to the VA for a follow-up. And actually it was probably a year later. The nurse was the first one that alerted me when I stood on the line to read the eye chart. And she said to read the line furthest down that I could read. And I read a line or two further down that I had read when I'd been there the last time. And
Mhm.
she gasped. That was not possible in allopathic perspective.
Right.
And so they took their other measurements, and then I had to draw out on a reverse graph paper. It was black paper with white lines. I had to draw the outline of, because what I would look at was black. I had peripheral vision that was usually somewhat scrunched. And so what I had drawn for them when I was still in the hospital was one thing, and when I had drawn for them and by their own measurements, that that scar in the middle of my macula had shrunk. And although I was still legally blind, I was able to see a little more.
Hmm.
And that was not at all in their realm of reality.
Hmm.
And so I thank them very much for their care, and I just kept working with the naturopaths, and one of which was using visualization, which I know you gals will probably talk
Sure.
about, the power of
Mhm.
visualization in healing.
Yeah.
But anyway, that led me to natural healing. And when I had a woman in the clinic who had a yeast infection one day, I said, well, I can give you some monostat, or you're early on in your infection here. You could just stick a tampon in some plain yogurt, and that would probably work for you too. I said, I've been studying different natural ways of healing. And she said, oh, well, you might be interested in hearing this Native American woman that's going to be talking next weekend at one of my friends' house. And she's talking about natural healing too. Okay, so I got there, and I got there on time, but the house was already filled. She was talking in the living room. The kitchen was the standing room only. The front porch was standing room only. The house was filled. So I listened to her speak for probably an hour, and I couldn't even see her.
Oh
And
my
I came
gosh.
back,
Wow.
and I she hooked me when in so many ways, but that she was talking about, well, there's probably some of you out there that consider yourselves to be, radicals, activists, and you're really going to change the world. But I want to know, are you recycling your garbage?
Yes.
Are you
Oh, yeah.
minimizing your footprint? And I was like, busted. No, I was not.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah. Weren't we all? My goodness. I
Good
remember that
grief.
so well. And she came up with that. I was like, oh, God, I'm living in New York City. How the hell am I going to recycle? But
I know. Yeah. Dee, what an amazing set of stories.
yeah.
First
But I
off,
forgot, excuse me, I forgot the one part that really led was the moon that led me to Oceana. That was
oh,
on January 1st, 1977. I was still looking for my spiritual community, and had gone to a New Year's Eve party at one of our council members, a friend's house, and I was walking back to my apartment, and there was a full moon over Seattle, and probably a little alcohol and marijuana helped, but I found myself suddenly like frozen in front of the moon, which had never happened
wow.
before.
Oh,
And I found myself praying to the moon
Hmm.
on that day. 12 days later, I blinded myself. And
Ah,
that
dang.
injury took me to Oceana.
Wow.
what a powerful story.
Isn't it?
And we're calling this podcast a challenge to fixed reality. And of course, that's a phrase that Oceana used. But in your work with healing your eye and going to visit and believing that it was possible to have a healing, I believe that you were a challenge to fixed reality to so many who were working with you. And I just, I trust that this was one of the transformative moments or experiences that shaped your perspective on life and work. Is there another that you'd like to share?
Well, that injury, losing my vision, was not only the answer to my spiritual quest, looking for, I had been really
Yeah,
looking for a spiritual community, or
yeah,
a way of being, any way that I could engage in, a form of worship that mattered to me, that felt authentic and um, of the people, just
yes.
free, available. So I basically thought of Oceana as somebody who could take me there. She just resonated, that if you really want to make a difference in this world, then you have to make a difference in your relationship to the earth.
Yes.
Yes,
So
Hmm.
the
yes.
Sufis were having a workshop that weekend for hers, and so I went, and I had to sit, right front center, and everything she said I took in verbatim. It just went to my core. For years I could quote her what she was teaching in those workshops to all my friends. And then she pulled out this huge crystal at the last day on Sunday, and or halfway through the workshop, I said to her, she sat next to me at lunch. I said, you know, you really need to get the word out more when you're coming back, because I heard about this through a patient, and I'm in the alternative healthcare system community. There's a network of free clinics in Seattle that have been there for years, Country Doc, all kinds, and I didn't hear about it through them. And so I told her that, and she said, you're right. So I'd like you to sponsor the next workshop and make sure that happens. So there's the call. Yeah, I got drafted.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, so typically her. So
Yeah.
typically her.
But then the next day on Sunday, she pulled out that huge clear quartz crystal, and it's right between the two of us. And she was talking about crystals, and I just felt this like anxiousness start to happen in my gut. And I was getting more and more anxious, and I was trying to understand what was happening. And then it started turning to nausea. And I didn't want to miss her closing comments. So I sat there kind of nauseous, listening to her. And then when she finished, I got up and ran to the women's room and I vomited. And I vomited so violently, I was vomiting bile.
Oh,
And one of the women went and got Oshana to, to see if I needed help. And she took me home. She made me get in her car. I only lived like 6 blocks away, but she drove me home and she walked me up to my apartment. She met Paula, my partner at the time, and made sure I had some chamomile or peppermint tea and took my temperature.
oh,
She took care of me. And I realized later that workshop was a healing, just listening to the truth, that I had vomited up all the lies that I
Yeah.
had swallowed over the years. And
Yes.
so for sure, this woman was definitely having an impact in life. And so I sponsored her and worked with her in Seattle until I moved to Montana in '79.
boy, that was a profound story. Profound. Oh
Thank
my
you.
God, Dee, there's so much more that we need to cover. We're going to have to interview you again. Definitely, we need a part two.
I
Um,
do. I agree.
yeah, I just have one quick question for you. If you were to pick one thing that Oshana has taught us that you do every single day still, what would that be?
Morning tobacco offering and evening cornmeal
Yeah,
offering.
yeah.
Those two practices, that's what took me almost 11 years to actually make sure that I really integrated that, and I worked with crystals. But it took me to realizing that the spirit that we are, we're only temporarily here in a body, but the spirit that we are has to be fed. It has to be fed daily, and she taught nightly as well. And
Yeah.
so to honor the masculine aspect of creation and that part of me in the morning and offering tobacco, um, praying for what matters to me and for others, and uh, in the evening, doing the same, offering to the feminine aspect of creator, the cornmeal, brought such a balance and peace in my life that was the spiritual practice that I really had been seeking for over 5 years from when I was in graduate school
Mm-hmm.
until I found Oshana. Consciously seeking, I mean, really looking. There's a lot of things that practices and things that uh, help here and there, but the morning tobacco and evening cornmeal are what really helps life to just go a lot smoother and to put everything in perspective. To remember, it reminds me every day that, okay, now I've done the most important thing of the day. I've communicated with my creator and fed my spirit. Now I have to go out in the world and see what I'm being called to do now.
That's really beautiful, Dee. And I
Thank
think
you.
one of the things that we don't often think of and reconcile is that we all have masculine and feminine aspects to ourselves, and that
Yes.
it's important to acknowledge those aspects, those characteristics, traits, whatever word we want to use, but that we each have that within ourselves, and to hold those in balance so that we can live a life where we can approach things in a balanced way.
That's the challenge.
That is the
While walking through
challenge.
the gauntlet.
Yes,
And
right.
I was sort of thinking that. I was thinking,
Ah,
to manage in the world nowadays, was what I was thinking. But I
Yeah.
kind of like the word gauntlet better because sometimes it
Yeah.
feels like it's a gauntlet.
Yeah, you can't see it
Sometimes.
coming, and there it is. Duck, yeah.
Duck.
Love it. Love it. So we haven't really talked about morning and evening prayers on the podcast. So that's something that we are going to direct our listeners to go to the two crones and a microphone.com to the blog section so that we can share those prayers with you. And if you choose to do them, that would be awesome. Absolutely awesome. Then it falls in with your wisdom practice that we're going to ask you to do for the next month. And that would be to smudge yourself. We've talked about it before. It's burning sage and sweetgrass and letting that smoke just clear your field. Recently, Sally and I were with a friend in the hospital. And since we couldn't burn anything, we did use spray. So it was a essence of sage and an essence of sweetgrass. And that also will clear the field. So you have two options here. Because if the smoke is not something that it calls to you or that you can do, you can just order the sage spray and order the sweetgrass spray. I use them every night, which I think I've told you like many podcasts ago, but I spray my room, I spray my bed, and then I feel like, okay, everything's all settled, time for me to go night night with my kitty and my dog, and off we go to dreamland. So that's your wisdom practice. And I think, oh my God, Dee, there's so much we haven't covered. Please, please promise us you'll come back. You've had the most interesting life, really, really. And you
And
have
we want to hear more of your stories from the path because, of course, we all have
Yes.
them.
Yes.
And I have a feeling some of your stories are going to be humdingers.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this
I
is good.
agree.
We didn't get to talking about kinesiology. We didn't even get to hear you
No.
talk about how you moved from working with women to
Yes.
focusing on working mostly with men who are combat veterans. We didn't even touch on that. It's just amazing that we didn't get there, but not surprising, because I think when you live your life fully, there's a richness that can't be distilled down in a minute, right?
Yeah.
It's a lifetime of learning, a
Yeah.
lifetime of gathering wisdom, and honestly, that's what Two Crones and a Microphone is about. How to somehow help other people along the path with the stories that and the learning that we gather.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love
You
that
have
the
to be
depth of
afraid. I'm sorry.
your stories
Mhm.
have a sort of vibratory quality to them. They're very, very deep and engaging. And I think they offer a path forward to other people to just know these things are possible.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
can be a challenge to fix reality.
Here, here.
How
Oh,
right?
Yes.
How profound is that? You're going to be blind in your eye and get over it and just learn to live with it, to actually healing your vision.
Yes.
Absolutely.
yes,
Absolutely.
today I'm not legally blind.
There you go. See?
Yay!
Hooray.
I had the help of a cornea replacement, but nevertheless,
Doesn't matter. Doesn't
There we
matter.
go.
You
there's
didn't
no black spot in the middle anymore, and that the cornea didn't remove that.
That's amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Dee, it's been such a pleasure.
Same
Yay.
here.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd be
It's
honored to come back.
good, good.
fantastic. We'd love that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's time for us to say we really appreciate you tuning into our podcast. We do. We're deeply grateful. And if you've enjoyed this and if it's something that's meaningful to you, would you please spread the word and feel free to reach out to us with any questions about what we were just talking about or any subject we talk about, we'd be so happy to answer them. And please feel free to leave a rating or share this episode with friends and family. And there's a little subscribe button that is nice because then you get a ding, you get a little notice every time the next podcast comes out. So we'd encourage you to subscribe to your podcast on your podcast provider. And of course, if you would, leave us a review on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn and tell us what was most memorable about this episode. And what we do is we're aiming to give you ways to be kind to yourself and others. So think about that.
Remember, we're trying to help you navigate the very muddy waters of our time. And until that time, Sally, do you want to take us away here?
Oh, I can. I don't know. Linda, did you want to say anything?
Well, I'll say one more thing. Just make sure you go outside and find your glimmer.
Okay. How about
job.
you, Dee? A word of wisdom or farewell?
Be blessed with an attitude of gratitude. That's what we can choose to do.
I love it. Thank you.
Nicely said. Nicely said.
Yes.
And so I will say, remember to walk in beauty. Kadishte. All is made beautiful. And remember as you go about your day, all is made beautiful.
Kadishte.
Kadishte.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.